is the day I was going to invite in 2021. And of course, it's a really good day to invite in a lot of things. Um, in fact, sometimes when you invite in, you get more than you expected. That's part of the nature of being a human being. By uh, asking for the package of being alive, you get everything that comes with it. So you can't really exclude a lot of things easily, or you can't pick and choose, because you can either zoom in or zoom out. If you narrow your view, you lose a lot. And if you open your view, you get a lot. But sometimes you're going to get things that you may not be very happy about. So I wanted to start out by just sharing a personal experience. About in 2010, I started participating in a yearly, I did it once a year, a week-long silent meditation. And I had never meditated before, but I was in, and I'm still in, this quest of learning. And I met a great teacher. His name is Richard Strozzi. It's Richard Heckler Strozzi. And I wanted to spend time with him, and he had this retreat at his ranch. So I went to it. And I went to it actually once a year for about 10 years, or 9 years, actually, 9 times. So there were 9 weeks in my life between 2010 and 2019 that I spent a week without speaking. One of the benefits of not speaking is you find out you're always speaking. You find out even if you're not in conversation with somebody else, you're in conversation with yourself. Not only are you in conversation with yourself, but you're endlessly conversing with yourself. Anybody who's been quiet even for 5 minutes without speaking, without a distraction, without turning on the news, without checking their cell phone, is going to start to be aware of the thoughts that come into their minds, of the constant thoughts, and I call them little movies or videos that enter our minds. Being that we're coming into this new year, not only do we have our own content, but we're getting a lot of content from media. Anybody who's got a cell phone and has a Twitter account, has a Facebook account, who listens to the radio or watches any kind of media, is going to have even more input, a lot more content, a lot more stuff coming in. My intention tonight is to explore, or to be curious about, ways to increase the quality of this year. Not that last year didn't have a lot of quality, but actually I wanted to springboard from last year into this year. Last year we had the opportunity, almost like a silent meditation, to have less conversations. We had less places we were going. We had a lot more time with our families, or if we had a family, if we have just a friend or partner, a dog, a turtle, or just, ourselves. It's an opportunity. It was an opportunity to lessen the content and to, I'll share with you the big take-home benefit that I got. Pardon me. The big take-home benefit that I got from those years of silent meditation, those weeks of silent meditation, was that every thought is like some beggar at the door, or like some salesman coming to you, and saying, I want you to buy this, and kind of grabbing your collar and, you know, looking at you in the face and raising their voice and gesturing a lot. Sometimes they put their foot on your foot so you can't get away. These are our own thoughts. These are our own creations. This is our own cast of characters. This is our own production, if you want to call it that. And we're constantly having these productions of, oh, I got to do this, I got to plan for that. A lot of it is planning, a lot of it is going through the motions of actions that we do, thinking about people, creating scenarios, most of which never happen, most of which will never happen, and most of which don't really do a lot for us other than to fill our plates. So by having that time of quiet, what I noticed is that if I just nod, like the beggar comes to the door and I open the door, I don't let him knock endlessly. I don't listen to his screams outside, let me in, let me in. I open the door, I say, thank you, thank you. And I look at him in the eyes and I smile. And I say, thank you. It takes a second and then I leave. Another thought comes. I look at it, I say, thank you, and let it leave. Today, we were bombarded with news stories. Just so happens. Today, we're bombarded with worries. What's going to happen? The election went a certain way. The social environment is a certain way. The emotions of some people around us were very hyped up. Everybody was excited and talking and worried and nervous and living in a sense of uncertainty. So, being that today is such a day, I wanted to take just a minute, just 60 seconds right now, of 60 seconds of just being quiet. And you can close your eyes, you can do what you want, but I'm going to be silent for just 60 seconds. And we're going to experience what 60 seconds is. That's about the longest 60 seconds of my life. I'm serious. That 60 seconds seemed very spacious. It was extremely, I kept looking at my watch and the watch was like going so slowly. And yet, when you ask most people, they say time is just going, days are going, weeks are going, time is passing. But we really don't take time to take time as a gift. So I'm going to share with you something that I do to take time as a gift, expand it a little bit, make it more fertile to receiving gifts. And what I do is I have I'll pick a line from Psalms, or I'll pick a line from a piece of poetry. And I'll just take a few words and I'll repeat those words slowly and listen. Esa enai elahari me'ayin yavo esri. I lift my eyes to the hills, to the mountains. From where will my salvation come? Now that sounds kind of longing. It sounds like I might not be so secure. I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where is my salvation going to come? But it's recognizing a state, a human condition, that we cannot rely on ourselves alone. The reason we have friends or a community or a mother or a father or a spouse or a partner, a friend, a cat, doesn't matter, is because we need to feel seen and heard and safe. And when we have a day like today, where we're assaulted by uncertainty and change and speculation and accusation and all kinds of things, as spectators, we can lose the inner sense of calm. We can lose that inner sense of, from where will my salvation come? When it says, I lift my eyes to the mountains, King David, who wrote that line, may have been talking about his parents. He lifts his eyes to the mountains. Who are the mountains to a child? His mother, his father. They're like mountains to a child. They're big, they're safe, they're tall, they're imposing. He can wedge himself between those two mountains and feel the warmth of their bodies. He can look up and see their eyes adoring him. He can hear the voice of either of those mountains saying, my beautiful boy, my beautiful girl, my brilliant boy, my brilliant girl. And even if that didn't happen, even if they said something else, we can, by saying those lines, we can recreate those two mountains of safety, of approval, of verifying that sense of our intrinsic worth, those mountains who acknowledge us and are our security. May ayin yavo Ezri, from where will my help come? The help doesn't come from those mountains. The help comes from the fact that I have been transformed by those mountains. I have had a start in life of security. I have a way of grounding myself, even when I'm bombarded with, what do I call it? Perturbment. You know, there's a word to be perturbed. If you go to the doctor and they put that hammer on your knee to see if you have a reflex, that's called perturbing. They would knock you to see if you have a reflex. So life gives us a lot of perturbing. We get knocked. Somebody backed into my car and smashed in the grill today. So I was a little perturbed, but I took a crowbar and I very carefully unbent it and straightened out the lights, and it was fine because I was unperturbed. And because I was unperturbed, there was the space for me to, may ayin yavo Ezra, where is my help going to come? Because I had that space, I knew I could receive what I needed to do to fix the problem, to address it. And even if it wasn't that simple, because I was in that unperturbed grounding, I could return to unperturbed, from being perturbed to being back to unperturbed. So today, I was concerned about what I was going to speak about tonight. And I got hijacked by the news. Friends called me. They said, "Do you know what's happening? Do you know what's happening? Revolution, blah, blah, blah." And different friends of mine were all excited. And I calmly, patiently listened to them. So I would say lesson one is to expand the place of silence. Number two, in that place of quiet, have something that inspires you, like that line that I said to you. Have your own line. Write your own line. Write your own mantra that allows you to resource yourself. If you don't have a mantra, go to your friend and say, what would I say to myself in 6 words that would calm me down? And listen to what your friend says. Your friend cares about you. Your friend is going to really give that thought and wants to give you a present because he loves you or she loves you. I'm going to stop for a moment for any questions, if anybody has any questions. I don't see anybody, but okay, so I'm going to go on. This week in the Torah is the Book of Shmot. Shmot sounds like such a funny word, but Shmot is the plural word for names. Shem is the word for name in Hebrew, and Shmot it's the book of names. Now you might say, isn't a phone book a book of names? Isn't one of those books you get with babies' names a book of names? Isn't a book of anatomy? When my daughter Shifra studied anatomy, she had to memorize 1,000 names of all these different body parts. There's names and names and names. So is it the volume, or what are we talking about when we say name? So the word name also happens to mean the word essence. It means the essence. So when Adam, before he got blessed with a wonderful partner, he was lonely. And God said, why don't you look around among the animals, the creatures in the world, and see if you can find a partner. And he made dates with every animal, with giraffes, monkeys, snakes, birds, everything. And as he would have that contact with that animal or that creature, he would say, what should I call you? And the animal would look at him and he'd say, I'll call you, and he'd give a name in Hebrew. He spoke Hebrew. And he'd give a name in Hebrew, and that name was always the essence of the animal. So if it was a dog, he gave the dog's name Caleb. It's all heart. Like a dog is all heart. When the dog is loyal to you, it's all heart. It's going to be like that. Different animals had different names, and he would give the name which was the essence. Adam himself gave himself a name, or God gave him the name. Adam he was from the ground. God took some of the ground and gave it life, and he lives, and until when the life goes out, he returns back to the ground, he returns back to dust. So the book of names, this book of the Torah, is about the essence. And we meet somebody in this book who's going to be a very important character for the next few months. And his name is Moses, or we call him Moshe in Hebrew. Moshe. Moshe means he was drawn from the water. He was pulled out of the sea. He was pulled out of drowning. Now, the reason that's important is because anybody who's called, I was pulled out of the ocean, it implies that they had some trauma. Didn't sound like he was pulled out of a fishing boat. The fact that he was drawn out, you can imagine a heart beating very fast, a lot of anxiety. Will I be saved? And this little baby boy, he didn't have his mommy or daddy. He didn't have those hills. He was abandoned. He was put out, and he was crying, and he was alone, and he was sad, as a baby is when he's left alone. And somebody came and saved him, and that woman who saved him said, I'm going to call you Moshe, that you're the one who was drawn out. You have the experience of coming from a place of anxiety to a place of safety. That name that she gave him, Moshe, was why God later gave him gave him the role of pulling people out of anxiety and bringing them to safety. That was his essence. His name described his essence. And that's who Moshe was. Interestingly enough, in the same story that we have this week, I won't go through Moshe's life with you, but there is an episode that most of you know about, which is the burning bush. And this man, Moshe, he did a lot of things in his life. He was, I told you, abandoned. He was the son of a king at some point. He was a fugitive. He was himself a king in Africa. He was a warrior, and he was a refugee. And when we meet him later in the story, he's a refugee. And he has no food, he has no water, he has no place to sleep, no safe place to sleep. He's really in trouble. He's like a man who's homeless. He's like a man who doesn't have a country. And worse, he's a fugitive. He's got a price on his head. The king of Egypt had put a price on his head. And if somebody brought him back to Egypt, they'd get a reward for bringing Moshe back so he would be killed. So Moshe was in bad shape. But he was, again, pulled out. He was pulled out of his problem by a man who became his father-in-law. His name was Yitro. And Yitro, of course, gave him a job, and he had a job as a shepherd. Moshe was a shepherd. Shepherd is not the most rewarding job in the world. A shepherd is a job where you have a lot of silence, where you don't have a lot of companionship. But because he had that job as a shepherd, and he was out in the evenings that are quiet, he was out in the desert, which was quiet. When this angel showed him a burning bush, he didn't just stop and say, what is this? He literally exhibited a huge amount of curiosity. And because he exhibited that curiosity, and because he was able to hear, just like he heard the animals crying, the sheep, he had been transformed by his life. And God said, Moshe, Moshe. It's not enough to say Moshe, but God or the angel called him Moshe, Moshe. Moshe wasn't hard of hearing. He could have heard it if his name was called once. But he's called Moshe, Moshe. In the earlier in the Torah, Moshe was a Jew, and other Jewish forefathers at certain points in their life were called Abraham, Jacob, different names were repeated. Joseph. And when that happened, when that name was repeated, it was generally a sign to the person that they were they had reached a certain level of awareness. And that's really, it's getting to this point where this is what my original thought was, that to really be resourced for 2021, I wanted to be able to focus on the micro and the macro. The micro of trust is having a sense of self-security. It's like that boy who has the mountains and feels safe between them, and where the parent says, "You beautiful boy, you brilliant boy." And the boy senses that security. He senses the warmth of his parents. He senses the welcome of his parents. And the macro is where he knows what his fate is. He knows he has a destiny. And here, Avraham was a father of a nation. Moshe was, you were drawn from abandonment to safety. You will bring others from abandonment to safety. So having these two things, this micro sense of my own security, the macro sense of who I am, what my essence is, and how I will steer in that direction. It's not important whether I fulfill that, whether I do, if my name is Abraham, am I going to be a father of nations? My name is Menachem. I have a Hebrew name. It means a certain thing. Am I going to fulfill that? I think just this Zoom class is part of me working on fulfilling my purpose right now. This is why I'm doing this, to fulfill my purpose. And I'm inviting each of you to fulfill your purpose. So by knowing there's a micro, and we can change that, we can adapt that, we can resource that. And if we can't do it ourselves, we can find a friend and say, help me resource my child, my inner child. Help me resource my larger self, my destiny, my essence. Between those two places, between the micro and the macro, is the field that we live in. And by having this sense of the micro of who I am, my child, my destiny, when I live in between, I live more authentically. I'm more grounded. I'm more able to be receptive. I'm more able to have a conversation. Even when somebody perturbs me, even when somebody calls me out, even when somebody insults me, or I feel that I'm insulted, even when I feel insecure, I'm in that field between the micro and the macro. And my sense of who I am is, it might be shaken, it might be perturbed, but I'm able to come back into focus and have a sense of getting back on track. Are there any questions at this point? Okay, I'll go on. I noticed, I don't know what got me into thinking about France, but France was the independence of France, the Republic of France, was the inspiration for the independence of the United States. And France, in the last few years, they had something called the Yellow Vests. And there's these spontaneous protests, spontaneous riots, spontaneous exclamations of emotion, of upset, of anger, of demands. And what is it from? I just read about it earlier. When these thousands of people get together and scream and yell and wear their yellow vests, what they're talking about, where they're coming from, and it's very interesting, is this started because the gasoline prices were raised and people were just not able to afford to live on their salaries. People who had to commute, take their children to school, drive to work, whatever, they were squeezed. They didn't feel they had enough money at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month to pay their bills. and they didn't have a place to turn. And they said, why is the government charging us so much tax? Now, this is a little heads up of what we're going to see in the future here, because you can't spend money like America spends money without taxing. So whatever taxes, and we're already kind of like the lobster in the pot. You know, we already pay 50% of our income to taxes one way or another: sales tax, property tax, taxes that are built into all the prices that we pay. But there's a relief valve. And in France, they understand politically that there's a relief valve. When people get upset, they protest. They don't say, you're an enemy of the state. You know, you're going to destroy the country. This is the end of the world. You know, you're no good, Nick. There's this understanding in France already, an understanding that people, when their needs are not met, when it's too hard to live, when you don't have enough money for rent, when you feel like you're taken advantage of and you feel it's unfair, you're going to be angry. And we say, express your anger. Let's see if we can work a compromise. The government, when all these yellow vest people started protesting, the government rolled back taxes. They said, we can't have this. We understand we've crossed the line. We've gone too far. Let's have a conversation. And now in America, I heard in Congress this evening, they're trying to have a conversation. Whether we really can have a conversation, I think depends on us each doing our own personal work. Our own personal work. Hopefully we have a community. We have a community to do that work in. Hopefully if we have a partner, we do that with our partner. If we have a brother, a friend, you know, anybody, we do some of that work with them, because these issues are always going to come up and it's always going to show up somehow. I'll give you an example, real good example, where I don't want to say I have a problem, but I realized I had a problem. So I have a friend. I'm going to say his name's Yossi. Okay, a friend. And when he would talk to me, he's kind of like talk slowly and deeply, and he usually carries out an idea, and it takes him about 5 minutes to carry out the idea. I lose him midstream. I'm already distracted. I'm thinking about something else. You know, I want to make an excuse to go. I don't want to give. I should say I don't want to. I didn't think that I was being rude. I just didn't even realize what the relationship needed, even in those few times I see him, to be able to give him the attention and to bend myself a little bit, you know, that I'm being rude. So one time Yossi said to me, Milton, I don't know what kind of guy you are, but I think you're being a little rude. I think you're really not paying attention. And he did me the biggest favor in the world, because I was willing to hear that from him. Now, it didn't mean I could change it so fast, but it did mean that he cared enough about me to say this to me, and I cared about him enough to listen to him. It could have been, what do you mean? Or I could have blown him off or said, you know, I don't need a friend like you, or you're boring, or I could have had 100 assessments about what happened. But I was able to choose the assessment that was the most constructive. And that's what I'm suggesting tonight, that that when somebody insults you, or when you feel a little pushed to the edge, or when you feel ignored, or when whatever's going to happen, somebody cuts you off, just take a breath and go, hi, hi. Now, what does that hi mean? I mean, I'm already there. Why am I saying hi? I'm saying hi to create an opening. to create an opening for me to come back to presence and to make a sign to the other person that I'm available on a different level now. Hi. It doesn't have to be some complicated head trip. It's enough just to change your face, to say one word, to be able to let go of all the stuff that was before, and to re-enter with hi. And believe it or not, it's like turning a page in a book. It's like having this opportunity to get into lightness, get into more conversation, to be able to put whatever happened behind you and move on. Because it's really all like that silent meditation that I talked about. It's just one thing after another thing. And when they come to the door, you say, hi, thank you. And it goes away. Thank you. And it goes away. So in our life, ultimately, the quality of our life is not going to be from one event. The quality of our life is from the methodology, from the habits we have to repair, from the ways we have to reframe or refocus on what's happening. So in 2021, where we are now, and whatever challenges we're going to have in this time, I, at least for the time being, will continue to share with you whatever tools that I'm learning and using a little bit at a time. And I thank you for joining me tonight. Before I go, are there any questions? Yes. Kelsey.
Hi, Milton. I was thinking of the two different ways that you used the hi when you were being silent and acknowledging the thoughts that came and saying hi so they would go away. It's a kind of a disconnect. And when you were talking about having savlanas with your friend and not being irritated, or you were using the hi as a reconnect to get back together. So it's like two different uses of the same idea.
Yes, it's stopping the monkey mind from complaining about the guest who you don't want, like getting in a wrestling match with them by just saying hi, thanks. You disengage and you don't get into the monkey mind in the wrestling match. Mm-hmm. And really, it's the same with the person that you're talking to, and then you feel trespassed upon, or you feel perturbed, or you feel you start to feel angry or upset or hurt or want to a little ashamed. Maybe you made a mistake, and to be able to say that is like saying hi. It's an invitation. It's got love in it. Mm-hmm. And the love is also part of the love for me. Mm-hmm. I'm saying I love myself enough that I'm not going to beat myself up right now. I'm going to give myself a hi. And I'm inviting you into that space. And it's so healing. Mm-hmm. And really, this is what we're about, is healing. We have this COVID-19, which is like a dark cloud above our head. And we have a vaccine that's about healing. So it's a mushel. It's like an analogy that we're all want a way to transition from the threat to the relief. We want to segue into being functional. We want to avoid being permanently damaged. There's no way not to be damaged. It's like my car, it was damaged, but I could fix it. I could repair it. My relationship with you, if it's damaged, hopefully I could say hi and say it with the heart of hi. and be received on some level for that.
Mhm.
And that is so spiritual, that is so godly, that is so above the monkey mind. It is so beyond any other creation that we have this gift to be able to restart, to move on, to it's like recreating the world.
Mm.
Okay, thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, then I wish you a beautiful 2 weeks, and I'll see you in 2 weeks, whoever's going to join. Thank you so much.